Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd. Hopefully you've survived the cold snap and are snuggled in to watch the show tonight. We've got a full hour of answering your gardening questions. If you would like to submit a question for a future show, drop us an email to byf@unl.edu. We do need to know as much as you can tell us about your issue. Please do tell us where you live. Do not forget to follow Backyard Farmer on those social media sites, YouTube, Facebook. As always, we'd like to start the show with a few samples, and Jody, you have just broken the mold in terms of samples.
Yes, well, Backyard Farmer lets me be a little crafty sometime. And my sample today are ticks, because that's what I've been getting calls with the news and for articles. So I've brought some samples from actually that I picked up walking my dog here, and also from a little boy's head. So I want to tell you that you should perform your tick checks on your pets and your people. And if you do have a tick embedded, you want to use pointy tweezers and pull that out. That second one right here, that is a tick that had been attached and feeding, compared to the dog tick here that has not been fed, that was just crawling around on my legs. Anyway, so you definitely want to do those tick checks. But this craft thing that I have here, it is to demonstrate questing, because I've often used that term before on how ticks find their hosts, because we hear stories about them falling out of trees or raining down out of the sky. They don't have wings and they don't jump, but they do have these legs that have these hooks attached to them. But questing is when they put their front legs out, and it's got those hooks, and they just kind of, when you pass by, or your dog or your pants, they get picked up. And these ticks, you might not think they're very fast, but they are, and they'll get to places where they can find a place to feed. So normally your upper body, the American dog tick, which is this sample here, my replica, that is often found in the scalp. So you want to do your tick checks and get your pets treated, according to veterinary recommendations.
I wonder how long it took you to make your little crafty tick.
Well, actually, I have to thank a little girl for giving me this molding clay. I just thought about it last night.
I love it. Thanks, Jody. All right, Rock, what do you have today?
It's not going to jump. It's not going to leap. It doesn't have little tactile things that are going to do anything. But it's wild strawberry. Mm-hmm. And wild strawberry is interesting. It's a member of the strawberry family. The berries are edible, quote unquote, but I use that cautiously because to me they have a really bitter flavor. I think, Kim, you said you think they're tasteless. And it takes like 9,000 to butter your toast or put on your toast. So yeah, it's not really worth it to think you can harvest them. They're also called woodland strawberries, is another common name from them. And the unique thing though is this one I have in my hand is actually a seedling. So for years we've recommended in the lawn use a broadleaf herbicide of some kind, and you'll control it, or you can actually pull them as long as you get every little piece, because they can segment on that runner just like the cultivated strawberries are. But more and more recent time, we found out that they're really prolific seeders. So if they ever go to seed, and then they've got a relatively long soil life, anywhere from 8 to 9 years. So, you can have them pop up, after you've eradicated it totally, either by hand pulling or by a herbicide. And so this is where we suggest a pre-emergent herbicide, because most of them in the landscape bed, preen works relatively well. Once again, as we've said in the past, preen requires multiple applications, up to 3 in a given growing season, to be very effective in the landscape bed. But in the home lawn, pendimethalin-based products, many of the other products that are just crabgrass preventers, will do a pretty good job controlling them. But if you have it and you're adverse to herbicides, at least the pre-emergents are less invasive or less toxic, and they would be recommended, because otherwise you're going to have them popping. Hand pull the ones that are up if you're, and then use a less toxic pre-emergent to get rid of them. So these are actually seedlings, and a great sample, because we often don't think of them as being seedling. We think of the runners being their reproductive way, but no, they like to seed.
And yes, they do, because that little pile is from about a square foot.
Yeah, thanks to Kim for providing it. So think about it. There's 8 to 9, 10, 11 seedlings in that little tiny area. So they're prolific seeders. So just keep that in mind, that the pre-emergent may be the approach you want to take.
Thank you, Rock. Creatures, Dennis.
Yes. So I'm going to talk about fox squirrels. We have a number of fox squirrels all around campus and all around a good part of Nebraska, even out towards the sandhills where there's some trees. And I was asked a couple questions today about fox squirrels. And the question was, are we seeing more or less of the black squirrels? Well, the black squirrel is just a variation of the fox squirrel. And so I have two here. This is our normal pelage or coloration of our fox squirrel. And this is one that is older, that was a melanistic or black. And the way it works is that they're not different species, they're the same, and two fox squirrels that look like this can have a juvenile that looks like this. Now this is an older one and it's starting to turn gray, like a lot of us that get older. But just to show you that they're not protected, they're any more different than the other squirrel. It's just a different in coloration, like we have brunettes, blondes, and redheads. And so they're the same species, they interbreed, and they're around most of the state, especially the eastern part of the state. Now, they do cause some damage, but they actually evolved with their native trees, such as the oaks and the cottonwoods, and they don't really damage them. What they do a lot of damage to is things that are sugary that are not native, such as elms and the maples.
All right, excellent, because yes, there are more black squirrels around, it seems like.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I have a theory on that, but we'll talk about that some other time.
All right. Okay, Jody, first picture questions come to you. You have two pictures from this viewer. This is in Lincoln. They tore, cut, and ripped this vine off the fence. It was covered in scale, and they thought they were spores. Those are actually the adventitious roots that let it cling. They do want to know what it is. They do want to know if they need to treat for the scale. They do have bees, and they plant for pollinators.
Okay, so this is Euonymus Scale, and it looks like a pretty heavy infestation, and the best time to treat for any type of scale is going to be when there's crawlers. And so the crawlers are present for Euonymus Scale May, and then also there's another generation, so it's like late May to June, late July to August, and so treating May and repeating again when you need to. So, and during that crawler stage, they're pretty susceptible to insecticides, but you can use like horticultural oil or insecticidal soap, and that would take care of them. However, that looks like a very large vine, and so you may want to prune out as much as you can of that, that particular one.
And this is a pretty aggressive one too, so unless they get it all, it will come back.
Yeah, there's a lot of other kinds of Euonymus that will also get this
Right.
Euonymus scale, so check those.
Excellent, thanks, Jody. Your next three questions actually are white pine. The first came from a viewer, let's see, I think that one was maybe Lincoln. And the second one, the same thing, and the tips are on the little branches. The third one, the big picture here is Brownville, and he said there was a white cast on the needles, but then and he thinks there's a prevention technique, and then he sent this picture of the trunks of those poor trees.
Okay, and the trunks look completely covered in that woolly wax. And so this is called like a pine woolly Adelgid. And so an Adelgid is, I would say it's like a cross between an aphid and a scale, because it does feed on the sap of the plants, but it's also covered like a scale with it, instead of being like this harder cover, it's like this waxy stuff. So that's what you're seeing. And so the pine woolly Adelgid, it can affect the twigs and the branches, and then the pine bark Adelgid will affect the trunk. And so what you can do is treat for that. It's too late for the dormant oil, and that's what you want to do in the winter before bud break, but you can treat like this month and in May with enough like horticultural oil or insecticidal soap that will penetrate that waxy coating that's over top, and you'll be able to manage it that way.
And it's a drench, isn't it? Like totally cover? Or?
You can do it with contact, but if you're looking to do drench, I think the only thing for homeowners is going to be like an imidacloprid.
Okay.
So, read the label and follow that.
Excellent. Thanks, Jody. All right, you have 3 pictures, Rock, from this viewer. This is an unwanted turf in the turf in Lincoln. He does have a bluegrass lawn. These areas, these light green, are getting larger every year. And he sent us a couple closer up pictures too. You can kind of see what's going on there. And in the next one, he wonders what it is and whether tenacity will take care of it. If yes, when should it be applied and with what frequency?
So this is rough bluegrass, or Poa Trivialis. It's in the same family as Kentucky bluegrass, but it greens up quicker and it's very aggressive in the spring of the year. It is a perennial. It's sometimes a seed contaminant in some of your, seed mixes, unfortunately, and it's really hard to detect, so it's become much more prevalent. The key word is great pictures, by the way, and I like the sequence because I got to see it close up, and I also got to see that it's spreading, which implies that it's not annual bluegrass, but actually rough bluegrass. Tenacity does not work on it. As a matter of fact, they use this grass in other locations as a permanent, and tenacity is actually labeled to be put over the top of it with no injury. Unfortunately, it's the old, spot spray with glyphosate or Roundup-like products, but true glyphosate, not the 19 Roundup products that are in your garden store. And it's actually low to the ground, as you can see, and you want to spray roughly 10 to 20% bigger than the spread because its runners are down underneath there, and you want to get those as well. But you're going to also kill the existing lawn. And it's unfortunate because they look like they take really good care of their lawn. It will turn really ugly off color in the summer. And sometimes you can aggressively fertilize at that point in time, not aggressively like 2 to 3 pounds, but just put down a garden store variety, and you might be able to choke it out, but it's going to come back. So you got to be eradication with something, a non-selective like Roundup, is going to be required.
All right, and then you have one more picture, and this viewer she wants to know what this is and how to get rid of it, and those stems are flat as they connect to the crown.
Okay, there's a couple of grasses that do that, that compressed stem. Mm-hmm. There's Poa Compressa, which is also a bluegrass, and when you look at this, it's got that distinct midrib. So this could be Poa Compressa. It's not very aggressive unless you over-fertilize, so I'm kind of surprised that they have much of a problem. But that's one possibility. The other possibility is flattened stems or rye grasses tend to have flattened stems. But that looked like a bluegrass to me, and with flattened stemmed, it wouldn't be Kentucky bluegrass. It would probably be Poa Compressa or compressed bluegrass.
And control?
Spray with Roundup and reseed.
All right, thanks. Okay, Dennis.
Yes.
This one actually came in earlier in the season, and we saved it just for you. And this little guy is living in the houseplants, and they want to know what it is and how to keep it there, I guess, or what to do with it.
Well, you can't keep it there, but you have to bring a bunch of insects in your house to feed it. It's Cope's gray tree frog, our only true tree frog, common across a good part of the state, at least half the state now. And it burrowed down into the soil when this plant or pot was outside to overwinter, and you brought it in and warmed it up. It thought it was spring, and now it needs to eat. So, and it won't eat worms. It only eats flying insects at night, primarily. So unless you bring a bunch of moths in the house, it's not going to do well in the house. So I would say open the door and let it out.
All right, excellent. Your next picture here is Midtown Omaha.
Yep.
And this guy also showed up under a flower pot on the front porch, and they wondered what this is.
That is a Mediterranean gecko, which are invasive in Florida and the southeast. And what probably happened is, it looks like a Mediterranean gecko, or it could be the Mediterranean anole, but one of the two. It's an invasive that came in with a plant. Destroy. Don't let it out here.
Okay. Perfect. Probably not what they wanted to hear, and maybe it's already happened. But
Yeah.
We don't like those invaders.
No, we don't want any invasives.
All right. Well, you know, it's a sure sign of spring when you see those purple, pink, and white blossoms on some of those understory trees. We went around East Campus to show you some of the beautiful examples that you might want to try in your home landscape. What an incredible spring. We don't get one like this very often. And of course, people focus on all those beautiful flowering trees. These are red buds, absolutely doing their thing. What I want to concentrate on is how to actually choose and place these ornamental flowering trees in the landscape. Because remember, if our weather gets hot instantly or we have some strange freak of nature, the flowers are not going to last very long, and then all you have is the form and the foliage. This is one example of how to use them in a natural setting. You let them come up wherever they are, you let them do their thing, and then they go quiet in the summer, but they just have that textural sort of an appearance. So even though this is one of the common flowering trees, I want to talk also about crab apples and what we choose in terms of the form for those. It's always so tempting to walk into a garden center when plants are in flower and just pick out that very first perfect blooming one. But what we really want to do is start thinking about what is your intent. Like those red buds that were all multi-stem instead of a single trunk like the crabapple, and they were in a grove and they were against a dark background, that gives you a different kind of a quality of landscape experience than lining a street or showing a complete specimen with another tree. Take the crabapples, for example. We don't think of them in terms of being a small tree. So you look at this particular crabapple and it's a rounded form with a round top and it's wide spreading. That is not going to fit in a lot of different spaces. It's not going to change its character if you try to prune it up, because also one of the things to realize about a lot of our smaller ornamental trees is their branching height is supposed to be low to the ground. So you have to choose wisely for the form as well as the flower color that you want. The other thing to keep in mind on this is a plant that has dark foliage is not going to show up as well against a dark background. One that has light foliage is going to show up against a darker background, and the same is true for the flowers. Japanese maples are an example of an ornamental tree that we choose first for hardiness, and that does not mean just what it says on the tag. You have to look at the environment, and this is perfect for Japanese maple. Understory against a background. I also mentioned dark backgrounds and dark foliage do not mix. This is sort of an example where they really do, because especially when this tree is backlit by the sun, it is absolutely spectacular. It's a single stem, it's protected, it gives you great beauty even without having the flowering occurring. These old weeping red jade crabapples are a great example of what plant breeders have been focusing on even more now, and that is differences in form, from weepers to very, very narrow ones like a carpinus called Franz Fontaine, which is about this wide. And again, if you think first in terms of choosing those ornamental plants for their hardiness, the location where they're going to live, your intent, you would obviously choose a weeping crabapple for something totally different than one where you had to have clearance to drive under it or to walk under it. This to me is a perfect example of a plant that I would have loved to have had when I was a kid, because you can go under there and you are hidden from the world. You'll also notice though that it is not nearly as full and beautiful in flower as the one that we looked at previously. So you choose this one not so much for the fleeting flowers, but for everything else it can contribute. So as you go choose those ornamental trees for your landscape, do think about that form and that intent first. Don't get all caught up in the beauty of just the flowers. Although I must say this was a year when it was really easy to get caught up in the beauty of the flowers. But there are also some amazing varieties out there for you to try. Many of them are extremely fragrant too, and so the nose gets its scent of spring. All right, Jody, the next picture questions. This is a viewer who has started seedlings in the basement under fluorescent lights. Last year she had fungus gnats. We answered this a little bit last week, I think, but we didn't have the pictures. So now she sent us some pictures. She's tried all sorts of things on them, and she wants to know what these are for sure and how to get rid of them.
Okay, so these little seedlings have a lot of aphids on them for being as little as they are. If you've had problems with fungus gnats, then there is probably a little bit too much moisture in your soil. And to have this many aphids, there's might be too much fertilizer, or what is it, is it nitrogen? But I did see the list of things that has been used on this, and I don't know if she's repeating every 7 days. I know there was like neem oil and a couple products, but there are also some products that don't have pepper plants and aphids on the label, so I wouldn't expect those to work. And so it's one of those kind of things where you might want to start over, because it looks like a lot more work than what it's worth with these little guys. So.
All right. And she's not too late to start her seedlings. So,
right.
yeah.
Like they're just so small to have so many aphids.
Right. And your next picture is a fun one. This is a Pender viewer. They were clearing some debris from their flower beds, and she saw this colony of ladybugs. And she thinks they survived the winter. She wants to keep them thriving. Does she leave the debris? She does use dark brown mulch. She's got all sorts of interesting plants in the landscape.
Yeah, so these are, well, some people call them pink ladybugs, spotted ladybugs, but we can call them pink spotted ladybugs.
The spots are black,
yeah.
Jody.
Well, they've got 6 black spots on each elytra or wing cover. They're a little different than some of the other lady beetles because they're not as dome-shaped, but they did overwinter as adults and likely under that debris that you talked about. They are really beneficial, especially for crop pests. So if you live, I don't know where they live, if they're close to crop borders, then they should come back and overwinter. If you've got that debris, they love the crop borders, mulch, any kind of like moisture, so they'll be back. But they're one of the only, I think they're the only lady beetle that actually can live and survive on pollen. So what you also want to do is maybe keep a few dandelions around, I think lily and a few other plants, corn. So yeah, I think they'll be back. That's
pretty cool. All right, Rock, this is what's growing in my lawn week, I guess, because here's another one. This is Lincoln. This shot up much faster than the young turf, and it's kind of in clumps in his yard in an older neighborhood. So they reseeded in the fall, and then this is what is shot up.
So it looks to me, I mean, it's either Crocus or Star of Bethlehem, right? So, which are bulbs, right? So they spread by bulbs. So when they work the soil, they probably, and we see Star of Bethlehem and Crocus usually on purpose, right? And Star of Bethlehem, not so much, but for some people, they like the plant, but it can be pretty invasive. So, it's not going to tolerate mowing as very well. It'll tend to be there a little bit longer than they probably like. There's really nothing you can spray on it to take it out, especially since that's a new lawn. But it's interesting to me because they must have moved a fair amount of soil and pulled those bulbs. In those older neighborhoods, you see a lot of Crocus and a lot of Star of Bethlehem, and that's what it is. And the lawn should be able to choke it out eventually, especially if they mow it. They're just going to have to bear with it for a little bit. And it's another interesting thing, though, is that these flowering bulbs are often put into warm season lawns like buffalo grass and Bermuda grass down in the south to give them spring color, which isn't the case because that looks to me like it's probably tall fescue or maybe bluegrass. But yeah, it's Star of Bethlehem or Crocus. And until it gets a flower on it, I certainly can't tell the difference. And I think even the plant experts at this table, primarily the host, couldn't tell the difference without a flower on it either. So yeah, it's a Crocus or a Star of Bethlehem.
Great, thanks, Rock. All right, and your next one here is a Carney viewer. What is this and how to get rid of it? They're spreading through the yard. They've tried various ways to eliminate it. When they pull or dig, they have all the little bulbs, and of course, some of the little bulbs sprout again.
Stay behind and make friends. This is an allium. It's a wild onion or wild garlic. Some people if you crush that, it smells like a wild onion, or it smells like an onion or garlic. There actually is help on the horizon because products that contain, or primarily if you can get a standalone product that contains sulfentrazone, and they're available in your garden stores. It's primarily a nut sedge product, but it will work if you aggressively spray on wild garlic or wild onion. In the lawn, it's labeled for our cool season lawns, and in the garden, it would have to be a targeted spray because it is primarily foliar. As long as you don't get it on the foliage of desirables, you should be fine. But be very careful in the garden. But when you get out into the lawn, just spray to your heart's content, and it will take multiple applications.
All right, thank you, Rock. And your final one is a Fremont viewer. She wants to know what this is, and I believe we found a little handful of this because the picture's a little hard probably for our viewers to see.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's a little leaf buttercup, and almost all of the buttercups have some toxicity to cattle. So we see this as a contaminant in spring hay, and it has a bitter flavor. But actually, since I'm pretty convinced this is little leaf. Little leaf has the lowest toxicity of anything, and there's been known because dogs can eat it and cats can eat it, and it can upset their stomach. But in livestock hay, it can be a little bit of a problem. But it's actually kind of pretty. It's a perennial. It's a native, and if it's in the lawn, then clearly mowing and some 2,4-D type lace sprays would be really good. But if it's if it's not really invading and causing you any problems, it's kind of a pretty early flower. It gets a very small but very prolific 5-petaled, right? I think it's 5-petaled. The bellflowers all have 5 petals. So it's pretty. You can't really see the flowers on this one, but this is it's not a bad looking plant, and it's an early flower, so before we get a lot of color going. But it's not a winter annual. It's an early flowering perennial.
Excellent. Thanks, Rock. All right, your first one here is from Seward Dennis. Okay. He sent this picture. He referenced night crawlers, but the question is, what is this and what caused it?
Well, it's a trail caused by a vole, with a V, and it was probably done under the snow cover. Once the grass starts to grow, you probably will not see that run. So it's definitely voles. They're a granivore. They like to eat seeds, and they nibble the grass down to the crown, and they normally do that under snow cover.
All right, and your next one is a Lincoln viewer. She wonders if this hole is from voles or something else. They do have vole trails, but they don't vole trails, but they don't lead to the holes. Say that 16 times.
Well, that is voles again, and I can see that it looks like a vole trail coming out of that hole. It's the right size and the right consistency. It looks like it's a vole in muddy soil. That's why it looks a little different. And again, why you don't see a lot of the trails is because once the grass starts growing actively, you have to get down on your hands and knees and part the grass to find those trails.
All right, and your next one is a Dalton, Nebraska viewer. She wonders what species of kangaroo rat this is.
Ords.
Oh.
Ords, yeah, ordi. So it's Ords kangaroo rat. Okay. It's a younger one. They're just coming out from hibernation. They're really a gerbil. They never drink, so they're cool.
Interesting. Ords.
Ords.
Right.
O-R-D.
As in Ord, Nebraska.
Yes.
There you go.
They named a town after the kangaroo rat. What do you know?
I'll bet not.
No.
All right. Well, it was a pretty cold week, and we had to tend to our plants in the greenhouse. So let's take a few minutes to hear from Terry James out at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, of course, we've put outdoor projects on hold like most of you probably have across the state. A little too chilly, a little bit of snow here and there, a lot of snow more out west. But we still have plenty to do in the greenhouse, and getting all of those lists and stuff ready to go is really a high priority for us. The greenhouse stuff is looking fantastic. We're making sure that we have those additional lights on so that we are giving them plenty of light when we have those cloudy days. We're also giving them a little bit of fertilizer just to kind of help boost them along. We are going to have to start pinching some of this stuff back and actually moving them up into different size containers here soon. The stuff outside has fared very well. We have a couple more cold nights, but we think that everything that's been planted should be good. So those peas, those radishes, all of those cool season crops are looking fantastic in our raised beds. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
Really? How cool is that?
As Terry said, our outdoor peas and radishes didn't have any problems surviving the cold nights we've been having. And hopefully your plantings are okay as well if you did not set your tomatoes and peppers out. You, right now, it is time for the lightning round. All right, Dennis, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Speaking of bats, is it time to exclude bats now? This is from a Nebraska city. All
Wait
right.
till July.
Wait till July, all right? There is a viewer who sent in a question about something clipping the branches of her Taylor junipers. Would that be squirrels?
Could be squirrels. If it's high, it could be deer. If it's low, it could be rabbits.
All right, and her follow-up question is, if it is squirrels up high, how does she keep them from doing that?
You don't.
All right,
Let it happen.
Okay. We have several, or a couple Lincoln viewers kind of in the center of town who think they saw blonde squirrels. Is that possible?
Yes.
And what is
Yep.
the
There's albino ones and there's grayish ones and blondish ones.
blondish ones? All right. This is a McCook viewer who used pellets in a tunnel to get rid of moles. Yes or no?
No.
So what should this person have used?
The
in
gummy
that
worm
tunnel?
type things.
With not cut in half or cut?
Never cut in half.
All right.
As directed, as the direction said.
Nice job. As I made up follow-up questions,
Yeah, I know.
but they were good follow-up questions.
Yeah, I just hope I got points for all those follow-ups.
Yeah.
No, see. Mostly. All right, so Rock, these are all real questions, depending on your answers. This is a viewer who wants to know whether removing an old 50-year-old cedar, would that have acidified the soil enough to need lime before they try to plant grass? No. All right. This is a Grand Island viewer who says there are all sorts of soil amendments on the market this year to improve turf. Some of them include charcoal. Are these worth the money?
Most of those amendments aren't really necessary unless you have a new construction soil.
All right. This is an Oxford viewer who wants to know how to get rid of Texas sandburrs.
So Texas sandburr is actually puncture vine, right? And so puncture vine is a broadleaf. You can control it with pre-emergent herbicides, but it often germinates a little bit later and gets away from you. Very early in its life stage before it sets seed, you can spray it with a three-way type product and it'll pretty well toast it.
All right. This is an Ord viewer who had their lawn aerated and the plugs are lying there. Should they rake them in or leave them alone?
They can rake them in. If you break that up, that soil going back down does a really good job for breaking down thatch, and it also returns the nutrients and stuff that are in the soil back to the ground.
All right, excellent. Nice job. Yours were harder questions.
Mine were real. His were fabricated.
They were not fabricated. They were just follow-up. All right, Jody, are you ready? Mm-hmm. This is a Falls City viewer who had chinch bugs in their lawn last year, and they want to know whether they should control them now, and if so, with what?
I would ask Rock.
You can't. So you passed.
Yes.
So this is an Ashland viewer who wants to know when they should spray for Zimmerman pine moth in their Mugo pine.
Okay, it's going to be April, and then again in August.
And they do also want to know what to use.
There's a lot of like synthetic pyrethroids that are labeled for Zimmerman pine moth.
Excellent. This is a Norfolk viewer who had flea beetles in all their asters last year, and they're wondering whether they would have overwintered.
Yes.
All right. This is a viewer who says the Japanese beetles are attracted to their grapes, and they're wondering if they remove the grapes, will the beetles just move on to something else?
They will move on to something else.
All right.
And everything.
And is there anything to do to keep those worms out of the buds of geraniums? That's also a viewer.
Just scout early and pick them off.
In other words, pay attention to what's trying to eat your geraniums, right? Especially since they turn color.
Can we follow up on the chinch bug question?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are multiple species and multiple generations, right? So if you go to the entomology website, they have the most comprehensive coverage of chinch bug. There's a nice publication on the University of Nebraska's entomology department on whatever it's called, or that one, you might know it better than I, but there's a great, because it's a fairly complicated process for timing, especially with multiple generations.
Perfect, and that would be the collaboration between the professions. All right, so plants of the week this week, since there is no horticulturist in the chair. Dennis, I should have had you do this.
No way. I would have ate it before.
Fed it to the squirrels.
Yeah.
You know, you just. Oh, brother.
Been chewed down. You go.
Yeah, here we have what was the plant of the week. Well, I just couldn't resist these Darwin tulips that actually made it through the freeze, and they're absolutely beautiful, and they're on long stems because the weather is so cool, and they're fragrant. And this is a shrub that is probably not known to a lot of our viewers very well. This is called pearl bush. This is actually one of the newer varieties of this that's a little bit smaller, and it's called pearl bush because when the buds are small, apparently they look to some people like pearls, like a little string of pearls. So pure white, fairly easy to manage, and of course enjoy the tulips because they really don't want to be perennial here. So there you go. Dennis, now you know 2 new plants that you will not remember.
Nope.
All right. Jody, your first question here is Northwest Buffalo County. They have a bur oak that has produced these. This was beginning in the spring of 2020. They pruned as many out as they could, but now they have new ones. So you're seeing the old ones and the new ones. Mm-hmm. What is this and what can they do?
These are galls made by a cinnamid wasp. So I would continue to keep pruning. There's not really any insecticide that is going to be effective and worth the money and the time. So unfortunately,
Nothing you can do.
nothing you can do.
All right. This is a viewer in Fremont. This is your next couple of pictures. These are European cranberry bush viburnums, and they're about 30 years old. They've started developing these knobs all over on the stems, and the knobs seem to be spreading. They want to know what these are and what can be done about them.
Okay, so these are actually not done by an insect. So these are a type of gall that's likely produced due to a fungus, a Phomopsis species. And so this is spread by like pruning, and it's in the soil. So it's something that you'd want to prune out when, like, wherever, if it's still growing, you know, what do you want to call that?
Still growing.
If it's still growing, well, you want to, is it higher or lower? Like, you just want to prune those out, and you want to sanitize your shears. And, you know, some of the stuff, literature will say to sterilize soil, but that's not really realistic. Mm-hmm. But, you know, try to keep it as healthy as you can for as long as you can. But yeah, it's not an insect, so.
All right. And your next oh, that's not you. The next one is rock, unless you want to answer turf questions.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
No. Okay, so let's see. This is a Lincoln viewer rock. They're wondering, is this lawn disease or insect damage or thatchy? She thinks these are spreading, and then she has they're dry, these areas, and then she has noticed birds pecking. She dug for grubs. It's a little early. It doesn't pull up. It does face south and receive full sun. So what are we seeing on these 2 pictures?
So I think it's neither disease. It doesn't show the characteristic disease patterns or insect patterns we would expect. Also, it's a strange time of year to be seeing this injury. And then she sort of answered her own question with the drought. Mm-hmm. It's very droughty, and if she has a lot of thatch, and the easy way to do that is take a tulip cutter, you know, a bulb cutter or something like that, and pull it out, or just a shovel and pull it back, and look at the, you know, at the base of the green tissue, even though there's very little in there. And what that happens, it gets hydrophobic or water hating, and it really repels water rather than takes it in. And then ultimately that there's some microorganism activity that goes on that coats the soil grains with, you know, microbial snot, for lack of a better term, and then it makes it even more hydrophobic. So aerification, some power raking probably is in order, and it looks to me like there'll be rough recovery, so they're probably going to want to overseed with a new or improved variety. You can buy wetting agents at the store. This is one of those soil amendments, but they're very short term, and they do help water infiltration, but they don't take care of the problem. So power rake, core air rate, bring the soil back to the surface and drag it in, and that should break it up enough that they can get water on it. If the lawn recovers, it's still a little bit early in the year, but they might want to consider some overseeding as well.
All right, and your next two are actually a Utah viewer who found us and sent these two pictures. He wants to know what to do about this lawn, and then what is the best turf builder that he can use to reestablish something that approximates turf here.
So by turf builder, I'm assuming he means like amendment or soil fertilizer. I'm guessing because there is a company, Scott's, that has Turf Builder as their brand name. So if that's what he's looking at, these two pictures, this lawn's in really bad shape. With all due respect to the homeowner, and it looks to me like it might Utah. Quite possibly, it got winter desiccated with I'm not sure about their weather patterns there, but if they didn't have good snow cover, and then they had desiccating winds. Then they would have probably, because that looks like winter kill to me, and some patches survived. They may have been, in an area that was more protected, or maybe they got a little more water going into the winter time. But that lawn is in need of major renovation. And if as far as the turf builder goes, most of the garden store variety turf fertilizers are well formulated and work really well. Just a rule of thumb is to get the one with the smallest granules, because then you get the best distribution. But I think that lawn needs to be renovated. I don't think it's going to recover.
All right, thank you, Rock. All right, your first question here is, it's a beautiful picture, by the way, wondering if there is more than one variety of fox in Lincoln. It's larger and longer legged.
No. In Lincoln, you probably only get the red fox. We do have 3 types of fox in Nebraska, but here you're going to get the red fox. And they have dark legs, and sometimes they're almost black. That still is the red fox when they're black.
All right. Your second picture is Scat, obviously, and she says the critter that left this has been living under the porch for over a year. It's chewed through the vinyl lattice to make a bigger entrance, and then it smells pretty rank. This is in Fremont.
Yeah.
She's never seen it, so she thinks it's nocturnal.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't have a scale. I'm just kind of going by the grass, but it's tough. It looks like it could be raccoon, but the way it's kind of torpedo-shaped, I'm leaning a little bit towards opossum. But opossums usually don't chew into areas, but raccoons do. Okay. And raccoons have latrines, which means they all defecate, or at least one, in the same place, whereas possums just go where they want to go. And yet that's on the grass, and raccoons like to bury it. So...
set up a trail cam.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's good. That's
your next one is also a scat. What is leaving this in the yard? It's in the same spot. They're in a residential area.
I wish I had some scale with that. It almost looks like goose.
Rocks are 2-inch.
Yeah, it looks like goose or turkey. There's some big turkeys around, right, Rock?
That's correct. That's why we like to take them.
Yeah, I don't see the white head, but I almost could see the uric acid. But that looks avian, definitely a waterfowl or a turkey.
All right, and you have one final one, which is hupper. This scratches on this flowering crab, even up some of the branches. What do we think caused that?
It's a little bit hard, but the only thing that would cause it like that and up the branches could be a bobcat.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. We have plenty of bobcats around Nebraska. So.
All right, cool, fun. Trail cam.
Yep.
When you go to the garden center this spring to pick up supplies, you'll probably notice words like organic, natural, maybe non-GMO. What exactly do those words mean, and what can you plant in your garden? So here's John Porter to help us figure out what those words mean to you.
We get lots of questions all the time about what do those words on the seed packet or on the pesticide label mean? And I'm talking words like organic, all natural, GMO-free. So today, let's talk a little bit about what those mean for the product, but also for your garden as well. So the most common thing that we see is organic. And what does that mean? So if we take a look at our seed packet here, it says organic and also certified organic. And what that means is that these were produced in a way that is organic or using organic inputs only. Does organic mean that it's pesticide-free? Absolutely not. Organic production and organic products can have pesticides and chemicals used in them, but they come from a natural source. So they come from some sort of mineral that comes from the ground, or they come from a plant or from a bacteria. And so you can find all kinds of organic pesticides that you can use for growing your produce organically, or the products that you buy at the store that are organic, they can have these products used on them as well. So do you really need to buy organic seed to have organic production at home? Well, if you're a farmer and you're growing certified organic produce, then yes, you have to have organic products. If you're gardening at home and you're just trying to do a little better, whether or not you buy organic seeds or organic pesticides is up to you. You know, with organic seeds, any of the pesticide that is used on the plant really doesn't go into the seed, and so you're not really getting that. It's whether or not you want to support the farmer, the company that grew it organically, whether you want to support their organic practices, or whether you don't care about that and are just looking for the seed that you want to grow and don't care if it's conventional. So really it doesn't have a big difference for you as a home gardener as to whether you buy organic or not. It's whether or not you want to support how they were grown. Now on the seed packet you might also see non-GMO, and so we have some seed packets here, non-GMO, so that means that it's non-genetically engineered, and this is a big buzzword, especially for seed packets, and really it doesn't mean a lot to home gardeners because none of the things that you can buy at the garden center as a home gardener are genetically engineered. They don't exist, like sweet beets that we eat, like these red beets. There are no garden beets that are genetically engineered. There are some sugar beets, of course, because all the commodity crops are what are genetically engineered, things like field corn and soy, etc. But there aren't a lot of GMO crops that you would buy as a home gardener, and if you did, you would have to sign a contract to buy them. So really that's marketing. It's almost like a scare tactic to get you to buy seeds, and it's become so common that people look for that all the time. And then a few other things that we might see on a label would be like eco-friendly, natural. Those actually don't mean a lot. They are a made-up word. The company makes that up, so you don't really have to, that doesn't mean a lot. Now the one thing, if you're wanting to garden organically, you can find pesticides that are for organic production. Like I said, they come from some sort of natural source, like a mineral or from a bacteria or from a plant. And so it'll say either for organic gardening or organic, or you'll see the label that says OMRI. OMRI is Organic Materials Research Institute, and they're the ones that sort of make a list of everything that's approved for organic production. So understanding this, you know what's on the label, and you can make a little more educated guess as to what is in that bottle or that packet whenever you buy it.
You know, a lot of times companies put these words on their label to lure you into buying them. So hopefully you're now armed with a bit more good information and you can decide what's right for you. All right, last round of pictures. Jody, you have two right here. This is cutleaf elderberries in a partly shaded location. Last year they looked fine, but some started to show smaller wilting leaves in late summer. When this viewer pruned them, she found these holes in several of the canes that were dead. She's wondering if they could have been caused by that elderberry borer, which I think was discovered or found in Omaha last year, and she wants to know what to do to protect the rest of the colony.
So it could be the elderberry borer. It's a very beautiful beetle, but the larvae can do this kind of damage. There's also an Eldershoot borer. Instead of a beetle, it's a moth larvae that does that. The best thing to do to stop this issue is to prune out all of those infected canes and then burn them, because you don't want them back in the garden. You don't want them to come out and cause more problems this year.
All right, excellent. Rock, another eliminate this. This is the Bennington viewer. One picture here. Wants to know what this grassy weed is and how do we eliminate this one.
So this image is, you know, fine for telling you that you've got something that's off, but I need a little bit of a better close-up and you know, some idea if it has rhizomes or, pulling the sample out and taking a picture of the root system can be real helpful. So I'm really sorry I can't help the viewer based on this image alone.
All right, but if they want to get rid of it, it's
going to be a perennial cool season grass, just like the lawn they're trying to save. So, glyphosate and reseed or hand dig and hope you get all of it.
All right, thanks, Rock. Your next one is a Lincoln viewer. They're wondering, is this quackgrass or tall fescue? They had their yard aerated and overseeded last fall, but then it's been invaded by this lighter green, faster growing.
And then the nice thing is with this one is we've got an image of what's called the ligule. And this is quackgrass. You can see where the leaf blade is coming down on that image, and then where it meets the stem, the auricles are clasping, so they look like they're hugging the stem. And quackgrass is the only one of the grasses that we see in those kind of cultivated conditions that has clasping auricles. So with those clasping auricles, that's clearly quackgrass. And once again, guess what you're going to do? You're going to spray with glyphosate and throw some seed out.
Right. So if that came up in his new lawn, I mean, his follow-up is kind of fun. Is there a way to treat it without hitting the reset button and reseeding his entire lawn?
That's a judgment call on how much they have.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's like throughout the lawn, then I would worry that it was, it could be, I'm not saying it is, could be a seed contaminant, and so they actually planted it. If they didn't buy high-quality blue tag labeled seeds, sometimes that can be a contaminant. Or they may have brought it up from below when they cultivated the ground to get it ready to on a reseeding. I think they mentioned something about this being a new house or something like that.
New seeding.
Yeah, so clearly they did some cultivation and could have brought up some existing seed or plant parts because it does have rhizomes, or it could have been a contaminant in the seed. I'm not saying it's one or the other, but those are the possibilities. And if it's really prevalent and all throughout the lawn, yeah, it's hit the restart button.
All right, excellent. All right, Dennis, a couple herps for you.
Okay, we already had two.
This is a Papillion viewer. She found this under a wood pile, and she wonders what it is.
It's a full-grown Dekay's brown snake. They eat slugs, and they have that small little head that goes inside land snails and pulls them out, so that they're an escargot feeder. That is full grown. They're live bearers. Their babies are only this big, and they'll have them in August. And they're great. They're 100% harmless, and they will eat your slugs.
All right, excellent. And your second one is also Papillion. This is a snake in the garden. They want to know if it's a friend or a foe, and they found him while they were getting their garden ready for spring planting.
And that's the same snake.
Huh.
Except that one looks like a female and the other one looks like a male. It's hard to tell this time of year. But it's the same species. It's a Dekay's brown snake.
Excellent.
Friend.
All right. I think we have one announcement before we go into a little handful of questions for the rest of you. That would be May Museum's 22nd perennial plant sale. May 1st, 9 to noon, Nye Avenue, and there is a rain date, which is May 2nd from 1 to 4th. So I know there are people itching to get some plants purchased and in the ground now that maybe the soil has warmed up a little bit. And it's in Fremont. We don't have Fremont on the screen there. So don't be driving to Omaha to Nye Avenue if there's one in Omaha. All right, Jody, a question for you. This is a viewer who is really wanting to use beneficials as predators in their landscape, but they're wondering if you buy them, do they work? Is there a way to keep them where you want them?
Nope, don't buy them.
Don't buy them.
You want them to be native. You want them to come on their own and stay. So.
Right. So no buying of the
you don't want to
beneficials.
introduce any pathogens or anything that's not going to be.
All right. Rock, you have a really interesting question here that is mentions IBA as an inexpensive way to improve root growth, and this is a Central Illinois viewer.
Yeah, IBA is indole-butyric acid. It is a growth hormone. We've done some work on tree plantings, and we don't, this is back when I was at Kansas State University, and we don't really see, you're better off buying quality stock than you are trying to take a a plant and force it to grow, because there's too much going on. In lab experience, it clearly is the hormone that causes increased rooting and more root hairs and all the other positives. But make sure you have a good planting hole. Make sure you plant it at the right depth, at least for trees. And it really doesn't do much in the turf grasses in terms of increasing rooting. Still, that tends to be far overridden by compacted soils and other things. So it's a hormone. It occurs naturally in the plant. You can buy it as an additive. I've seen some positive results in container plants with IBA, but.
All right. Thanks, Rock.